The Shift is brought to you by SE Healthcare. Welcome to The Shift. I'm Dr. Andrea Coyle. Hello, Shifties. Dr. Andrea Coyle here. Welcome back to the next episode of The Shift. Today, we're going to do things a little differently. We're going to make a true shift. I'm going to have two people at the same time, and we're going to talk about their incredible book that I highly recommend. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jackie Medland and Marti Moore. So ladies, if you would please give your introductions because I don't want to leave anything out. Jackie, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, I'm very proud to say mom, wife, and have successfully led in healthcare for probably 4 decades. And right now I've currently got my hands in two pots. One, I'm a principal at Medland Inc., which is my own boutique consulting firm. And then the other is I'm an associate clinical professor at the Edson College of Nursing and Health Innovation at Arizona State.
Wonderful. And then Marti, you're up.
Well, I can add one more thing to Jackie's comments of wife, mother, grandmother. And so I have two incredible granddaughters that I just think the world of. I am also a consultant. I work both nationally and internationally, and really look at helping organizations elevate up clinical practice. One of my greatest passions is moving forward. We've got to move forward. We've got to elevate up. And so you'll hear that in my words. You'll hear that in my tone.
I love that, Marti. I'm going to actually piggyback on that. My son, Finn Coyle, is a junior at the Citadel Military College in Charleston, South Carolina. He's first sergeant of his company. And we recently attended their recognition day, which is a really big deal. And the speaker, she was a Citadel graduate, she kept saying, aim higher. And that really resonated with me. And I think in healthcare, specifically nursing, I believe it's our role as leaders to help inspire nurses wherever they are in their careers and for ourselves to continually don't settle for present, but let's just keep aiming higher. And speaking of aiming higher and then shifting, I'll call it a shift as well. You two wrote this book. And I have to tell you, I'm going to put it on screen because we can also be seen on YouTube. It is called The Leadership Sandwich. And I have to tell you, there are so many incredible takeaways that they resonate with me and they will forever. I'm just curious. Tell me what shifted, what happened that you were like, I want to be an author and I'm going to write this book and we're going to call it The Leadership Sandwich.
Jackie, you want to start?
Yeah, that's a loaded question because, anybody who does any writing of any kind in terms of, either academic assignments or books or presentations, you all know what an effort it is. So, Marti and I found ourselves together, I don't know, maybe about 20 years ago. And, what I always appreciate about Marti is that she was a human-centered leader, much like I was, right? So, while you can focus a lot on the tasks or the people and, situationally it requires different things, we focus, generally speaking, on people. So we naturally aligned. We naturally came together. And, we started talking and, I said, gosh, Marti, I just wish that we could fast forward some of our learnings from our 40 decades of leadership practice to help other people. So then we started musing about a book. And so that's what kind of brought it together. And as we were clarifying, though, how this book was going to be unique and different from a lot of other things that you're seeing in the industry, we know that busy healthcare leaders don't have a lot of time to be going through all of this theory to figure out how to be in practice. And so we thought, let's make these. Some of the stories are fun, as you know, Andrea. Some of them, you're like, ooh, boy, this one was a little bit gnarly and challenging. So we wanted them to be short and brief and provoke learning. And so we have insights peppered all throughout the chapters. And of course, there's some discussion questions at the end. So that's why we did it. We thought, gosh, there's got to be a way to help people learn from our experience.
Yeah. And I also wanted it to be timeless. This isn't a book that you put on the bookshelf. This is a book that you kind of keep on your desk. And when you've had, that hard day, you just kind of open up a chapter and you feed yourself, or you're struggling with your team. So you look at how can you feed your team, or even organization wide. And the other part of this for me personally, and Jackie kept saying to me, Marti, you're being too verbose here, trying to make those stories just crystallize and giving those insights. There is so much learning from each story. And as I reread them, I'm looking at them again like, oh, I never even thought about that. So that's how the book came about.
I love it. And here's one thing that you mentioned, timeless. And I think leadership evolves 100%, and we're all lifelong learners, and excellence has no endpoint. These are some of the things I always say. And I agree with you. Many, if not everything, actually everything in the book is timeless. And one thing I love, and I'm going to read it right now, feedback can hurt at first, but can become a precious gift in time. And I feel like in my career, feedback, I like to call them courageous conversations, because sometimes they're difficult and you have to have courage. They are a gift. And some of the best learning comes from someone being able to be courageous and give you feedback. Can you tell me a story? Tell me the story from the book so that the shifties can hear it.
Yeah. Well, we probably each have one. So, Marti, I'll let you do the story that you think really epitomized feedback, and then I'll share with you mine.
Well, for me, it was the survey results. And the employee survey results, I used to have to put on my flak jacket and and I didn't see it as a gift. I saw it as a task and a tactic. Until there was this one comment, and it was, Marti Moore is like a cold fish. Ouch. And so I went to my boss and I'm like, I don't know where that came. I mean, and he was like, you can't win them all. Well, yeah, we can. We need to be authentic leaders. And what was happening that people didn't see my heart. And so I asked a person that I knew would hold me in the palm of his hand, and I trusted explicitly to just watch. And he watched. Now, he said, this is a tale of two people. Marti Moore up on the clinical side, she's in her element, she's engaging. But Marti Moore walking in the administrative hallways, head down, not engaged. And so that really fundamentally changed me. And his feedback. And again, I knew that he had love in his heart for me, that he respected me, and I trusted him. And that is also part of that ability to hear that feedback, take it to heart, and then make those changes. And I made those changes. And I realized that I'm always on stage. I'm on stage when I was in the grocery store. And I had to be engaging with people. And that it was just this crystallized learning for me. But the other part of it, and then the punchline for that, is when I did that, when I shifted in my thinking, it created those avenues of relationships that just are still intact today. Even though I am no longer the CNO, over that organization, I still have those deep relationships with the people that connected with me, and I connected with them.
Mhm.
And Jackie, do you have a feedback? Because I have a feedback story as well.
Yeah. Well, so just so you know, Marty just made me shift in my seat because I thought, oh, well, then I probably need to think of a story of somebody giving feedback, right? And so I think the key message in feedback is, what is your intention,
Mm.
right? And the gentleman who was trying to shepherd Marty in her journey, he had love in his heart. And the story I want to share is one where I actually had love in my heart, and I had to give some feedback that, quite honestly, I didn't know where it was going to go. And the name of the story is called Einstein in the Corner Office. And it's about a colleague, a dear colleague, who had a tendency to be the only person that was ever right in the room. And so he had a way of just making everybody else feel wrong. And he did it very, very consistently, right? And it wasn't just with his immediate colleagues, it was with all layers of the organization. And so you can only imagine how that just kind of just eked away at the spirits of everybody who worked closely with him. And again, this was a gentleman that I valued and respected. I joined the organization because of him. And I remember we had fallen onto a financial crisis. And I thought, we're all around the room and we're like, man, this is really an issue. And I remember thinking, well, I'm going to work with my team to do X, Y, and Z. But before I got those words out of my mouth, he came out with this declaration. All right, I want to see everybody's performance plan, who's not meeting budget by this amount, and I want to see it on my desk by Monday. And that was an idea, but wasn't really the right one for this organization that had matured very, very nicely around all of our strategic goals, and they knew the importance of hitting your financial targets. So anyway, I did what he said, right? I thought, not worth it, not worth the effort. And I did what he said, and it continued to kind of eat away inside of me because I thought to myself, you hired me. You obviously believe that I can do this job, so let's talk about what that looks like for me. And so we got in a room, and I acknowledged the fact that we were in a bit of a financial crisis. And then I commented on what I heard, and more importantly, what I felt from him in that room. And I just left him with a question to ponder. I said, you know what? You are the smartest guy. I'll give it to you, right? Hands down, you're the winner. And I said, but if you're the smartest guy in the room all the time, what does it make everybody else? And that question stopped him in his tracks. And he started to justify it, and then he started to really reflect, and then throughout the conversation, because he knew that this was at the center, my heart was at the center of this feedback. I wasn't trying to prove anything, but just to say, gosh, if you want us to be successful as an organization, we need to be different together. And so over time, we developed this glorious relationship, and when he was going down that track of I'm right with his colleagues, we agreed on my gentle brush on the shoulder, which was cueing him into the fact that he was heading down that path again, and he used it to do a mid-course correction. So anyway, again, it's all about heart. Feedback is a gift, but what's your intent, right? Is your intent to belittle, malign, or is your intent to demonstrate caring and compassion, and more importantly, growth?
I think that's the key, growth. And so I'm just going to share a really short little example of when someone shared feedback with me, and it kind of stopped me in my tracks. I have a lot of energy, I have a lot of passion. Sometimes it scares people. I'm aware of it. And I was in a leader role, and it was one of the clinical nurses in the unit. And I was always zipping through the unit real quick. Hey, how's it going? What are you doing? It was zoom, 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 zoom. And this clinical nurse said to me, you zip around so quickly, it feels like you don't care. You ask how you are, but you're not even listening, and then you're on to the next person.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still thinking about to this day, and that was probably 20 years ago. And she was right. And it made me think, if I profess to be people first and human centered, I'm not, because I'm not authentically listening. And when I say, how are you? And I'm really not listening, that's not authentic either. And so it really helped me recognize that I have to be engaged. And if I ask someone a question, I have to really listen. Or why am I asking? And so there was obviously more to the story, but that was a really powerful message. So my question is, how do you think for shifties that struggle with providing courageous conversations or starting a courageous conversation, how's the best way, or one of the ways, maybe not the best way, because everyone receives things differently, but what's one of the ways that you can start a conversation when you want to give someone feedback because you want to help them grow and you want them to be the best they can be? How do you start that?
So first of all, as you know, there are many people that have written about this topic. And so, the Grannies, the Pattisons of the world, right? All that crucial conversation, great work.
Right.
And it was actually one thing that I read from their books early on. I think it was when Crucial Conversations first came out. And it was start with the heart. And the start with the heart piece is more about getting clear on your intention, right? So what am I hoping to accomplish as a result of that conversation, right? And the other thing that I would say is that as you prepare for those types of difficult conversations, and they can go anywhere if you're truly listening with your heart and not your head and trying to figure out your next move, I think the other part is getting clear on you, because whether we realize it or not, we are not innocent bystanders, in all of these interactions. And so we also have to get clear on us and how we may be contributing to what we're seeing. So, and again, lots of other things to probably talk through. That's a whole nother podcast, but those would be my top two.
No, it's so great. And as I'm sitting here listening, I think as any shifty, this is such a great episode for growth and to sit back and think about, because the courageous conversations, the difficult conversations, whatever you want to call them, they're not just in the workspace. I have a 21-year-old and 19-year-old, and I promise you some of those conversations are not easy.
Well, that's what I was going to share was, I was a master trainer for Crucial Conversations, and yet I was failing at home. I had a teenager, I had a husband, and I was like always in my lizard brain. And what the lizard brain is that when we feel self-righteous, when we get that fight or flight kind of moment, really and truthfully, the blood drains from our brain and we have the cognitive capacity of a lizard. And one time I shared with my husband, that whole story. I was trying to reflect on him that he was in his lizard brain. And he came back and said, I think you're thinking like a lizard right now. And I was like, I'm not. And then I went, I am, because I wanted to be right. I wanted to nail that point home and to sit there in my self-righteousness versus I needed to hear him. I needed to hear my teenage daughter at the time. And by the way, the whole issue was around H1N1. We were in total pandemic. All beds were full. All beds were full in ICU in our community. And my daughter was trying to tell me she wasn't feeling good. My husband was trying to tell me she wasn't feeling good. She ended up in the hospital for 4 days. That was an incredible learning lesson, because in my self-righteousness, I was like, you're doing fine, take this, do this. And then when she was admitted, oh, head hung low, head hung low.
That's a really good, powerful story. So thank you for sharing those. I have one more quote from the book that also stuck with me is command and control tactics limit diverse thinking across complex organizations. Can we talk about that? I
Yeah.
think it is, those days are gone. The command and control days are gone. And I'm just curious. Let's just talk about that for a minute.
Jackie, you want me to jump in?
Yeah, why don't you jump in? And
Yeah.
there's a number of stories actually that allude to this type of leadership style throughout the book. But I'll let Marti kick it off.
Yeah, so when you look at command and control, and typically it is leaders that are feeling insecure, and so they have to have, this tight guardrails, or leaders that are young. For your listeners, I will tell you that it isn't about a formal title. Command and control could be within the teams of individuals that are working together on a shift. And so somebody may have the formal title of charge nurse, but that isn't the real person that is commanding and controlling. What happens is that people then advocate. They advocate their thinking. They stop, trying, and they just go in and do their job. And you watch that in organizations, as whether it's at the top or whether it's seeped throughout. You can walk into an organization and listen to the conversations, which I have done many, many times. Listen to the conversations that are occurring. Well, they don't tell me this. I don't know, versus having that initiative, that ownership, and that engagement. That's what you want in an organization. You want every single person to feel like they're the CEO. And they can make those decisions. They're empowered to do that. They have the tools and the skills and the abilities to do that. And they rock and roll.
Great example. When you were saying that, Marti, I started thinking of imposter syndrome for some reason.
Yeah.
Command and control, I feel like sometimes maybe someone who is suffering from imposter syndrome may display that as a command and control. That's just where my head went with that.
Yeah.
Jackie.
And so again, whole nother podcast, so right? When ego enters a space and, versus when the best of you, your essence enters a space, it's a whole nother podcast. But when I've, like many of us, we've thought so much about diversity and inclusion and belonging. And, the first thing I want to say again is I want to acknowledge all the experts out there who've spent entire careers writing about this important stuff. And in fact, I think Marti would agree with this. I think what makes our book a little bit different, we always hear about evidence-based practice. That's not to say Marti and I haven't relied on the evidence throughout our leadership practice, but these stories are really about practice-based evidence. What we've determined to be kind of tried and true strategies, and as we've worked through the tough stuff of healthcare. So I want to put that out there because I don't want anybody to take anything that we're saying as gospel because there are so many right ways, okay? So I got to acknowledge that formally. But when I think about this important topic of inclusion and bringing everybody's voice forward, again, I'm going to go back to me, right? So how am I being in the workplace that allows me to hear the voices of others and more importantly, to truly see the people that I am walking alongside in this most important vocation of caring and serving others. And I think actually, Andrea, your example is a beautiful one. Were you really seeing them? Were you really seeing them and all their complexity and messiness and humanness when you're running by and saying, how are you today? Right? So So I think as leaders, it's the call to slow down.
Oh my gosh, call to action, slow down, get rid of the hustle culture. I'm 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 from the, I believe we're probably all three from the hustle culture. The more work, you got the badge of
Mhm.
honor, and we're not there anymore. We need to slow down. We need to embrace, take a deep breath, engage. And so that's a really great point. I have to tell you, I'm incredibly energized by this podcast, and I feel like shifties, again, no matter where they are in their career, if they're students or if they're CNOs and they listen to this is so amazing. First of all, I'm going to ask if we can get together again and just have more discussion on truly leadership, these little bite-sized leadership segments that are not only powerful in the work and the four walls of your healthcare system, but also in life. You can't stay cemented in one place. You just can't do it. That's the landscape of healthcare changes too quickly. Our lives change too quickly. So again, I'm going to extend the invitation. I'd love to have y'all back. How can we right now, where can we tell the shifties to go get this book? Because it's so funny you said this, Marty. It's not one you put on the shelf. It's been in my backpack when I travel. It's beside my bed. And every time I think of something, I'm like, let me go back because I kind of remember reading about that. So I agree with that. This is almost like a little thing you put in your back pocket. And you're like, oh, let me refer to that. Where can people get this book?
So they can get it at Amazon. We made it very, very, one click, put it in your cart and check it out. They can also get it at Ingram Sparks. And if they want to do multiple purchase, Porchlight. So we have a website, www.leadershipsandwich.com. And they can click on that and uh, go right to it and order up.
Yeah.
And
Hey, Andrea, I just have to correct
yeah,
that a little bit. It's
The
www.theleadershipsandwich.com.
and
And
it's
that's okay. You know what? I get confused all the time. And what I think is also cool, if you go to the website, you'll see some free offerings for people. You know, there are people who are beginning to use this book throughout their organizations for leader book clubs. And we've put some companion pieces on our website. We've provided a book club guide, and we've also provided some pre and post test questions so that we can begin to see the bump shift,
gift.
shift in leadership performance of our colleagues that, that we so desperately want and see from them.
Jackie, it's so funny. I was just getting ready to say, this to me is a book that would be great for journal clubs, even for your professional or shared governances, because often people involved in professional and shared governance, they're new leaders, they're aspiring leaders. I believe all nurses are leaders, but they want to maybe get into a more formal leader role. A great book to have. If I'm the CNO and I'm meeting with my directors or maybe my ACNOs, another great book to have. So I'm glad you said that, Jackie. Okay, here we go. Takeaways. Shifties want one takeaway from you, Jackie. I have had like 10 during this discussion, but one quick, powerful takeaway. And Marty, think of yours as well. And if yours comes first, just shout it out.
Yeah, I would say if you want to have impact in the workplace, be conscious about what you're doing. Don't don't just react to events around you.
Oh, can I piggyback on that? I always
Well,
say,
I don't know. It's the end of your podcast.
I love it. I like to say on purpose with purpose. Yeah, on purpose with and intentionality. Marty, what do you think?
Here's what I would also share is that we always have choice. And Jackie says that to me all the time, in that we live in choice. And one of the things that I would share with the shifties is choose, choose carefully, choose passionately, live in choice.
Oh my gosh, I'm so like energized right now. I cannot thank you two enough for your great work, your leadership, your ability to inspire. So I want to thank you, and I will be inviting you back. I'm sure the Shifties will be thrilled. Whenever we come across each other face to face, I have Shifty merchandise I'm going to give y'all. But I always say this, Shifties, remember, your shift makes a difference. Keep shifting. Enjoying the shift? Help us reach more nurse leaders by rating and reviewing us on your podcast app. It takes just a minute, but makes a big impact. Search for The Shift, tap those stars, and share what you love. Your feedback shapes our future episodes and helps others discover us. Remember, rate, review, and amplify The Shift today.